I would love to bring up some of the cast. So I know that one of them will be coming back in a minute. So I would like to get my lead, Grace Van Patten. I'd like to get Emily Mortimer. And Timm Sharp. Timm Sharp. There he is. And here's Tim. Are you going to give me a big hug? Don't do, because I hope you do cry. And there's so many people that I would like to be getting up here, but I think I'm at the max. But my editor, Adelina, my director of photography, Ryan Edelston, JC, who did the most beautiful job on lighting, Hannah, anyway, I could go on and on, because they all did an incredible job. And to Maggie Monteith, the producer of Up There. There we are.
So I will be kicking it to the audience in just a minute, but I wanted to start and just ask you a very basic question. Where did this story come from? What is sort of the kernel of this?
Well, it came from a few different things, but one of the things, my cousin had lived with a writer, and I just thought that was an interesting idea. I loved the idea of having this sort of very hallowed, respected, incredible writer, and then having somebody that just has no interest in books or reading, living with her and just sort of just getting a close-up look. I just like the idea of these two women knocking about in this house.
Right.
So I think it just came out of my head. And then I read there was a book that Jenny Dinsky wrote called Gratitude, about living with Doris Lessing, and I found that really interesting.
Grace and Dolly, I wanted to ask you about your character. Her mannerisms, her sort of entitlement, the development of that character, just her everyday sort of being is very particular and very funny, and seemed like something I'm guessing was, discussed between the two of you. I'm just curious about the development of that character and just sort of some of her idiosyncratic tendencies.
I think that it's not Grace at all. There are quite a few of those things that I do, like I've been told by my husband, and even when I stayed at Tim, that there was toothpaste on the mirror. So I think that I'm probably responsible for some of those things. And then it was just things that I've noticed people doing, but I just really wanted Lillian to do that. And I can remember at the beginning, Grace being like, she's gross. And I was like, no, it's fine, just doing these things, it's fine. Using a toothbrush, yeah, go on, just use a toothbrush.
I also know people like that in my life, so I think everyone has that kind of person that's overly comfortable in people's homes.
The eating in particular, I felt.
Eating, yeah. Grabbing a bottle of wine out of the fridge, very overly comfortable.
Do we have questions in the audience? We actually have mics in the aisles that you can just pop out and grab for any of our guests. Yes?
It's such an extraordinary, beautiful film. Congratulations. The writer, the fact that you got Zadie Smith, the fact that you got Jonathan Ames to dance, and Martin Amis, were those improv? Did you tell them something about the book that she had written or the scene in it, and then have them improv, or what was the?
Yes, I definitely. I mean, I'm not that cocky anyway, but I'm definitely not cocky enough to write dialogue for Zadie Smith and Martin Amis and Jonathan Ames. So I just told them exactly who Julia was and what I want, in the book, the sort of book she wrote, and what I wanted to happen, and then they just spoke, and I chose the bits that seemed the most pertinent and right for it. But the bit that I just can never get out of my head is that moment when Martin says about happiness writes white. That unhappiness is cow-like and bland.
Other questions? Oh. Yes, over here.
I loved the film. My question was, I felt like at that one of the early scenes at the dinner table, Julia is expressing quite a bit of animosity toward Lillian, and I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, because I feel like it also wore off rather quickly once their exchanges through writing progressed, and I just kind of wondered whether, you know, that animosity was actually supposed to be there and what it meant, maybe.
Because it's almost a criticism. No, so, no, I think that I was just trying to make a sort of cliched point that in theory, you probably, if you were getting on a bit badly with your husband of how many years, or you had, or also that her character is quite formidable, and that her husband is sort of, I think, this sweet guy who's trying to sort of make her happy, but she's stuck in her right, she can't write at the moment, she's blocked, she's not getting on very well with her husband, and then this sort of vaguely attractive young woman arrives at the kitchen table who is just so easy and confident and relaxed that I understand it, and also that her husband, I just wanted to show that she's walking in on, I mean, I've had all those things where you have around and you ring the doorbell and then you're sort of like, hey, you know, that she's just walking in on married life and this moment that they're going through, but once the husband isn't there and they have to deal with each other, that quite quickly she does drop her guard and is quite interested in Lillian. And also there's a history, which I don't know if that was clear, but that, you know, she knew her as a child. So at first, she's sort of curious, but she's just, I don't know, that's just how I wanted to tell that part of the story. And that they would warm to each other. And, yeah. Have you got anything to add, Em?
Didn't he invite her?
Yes, exactly.
I think her husband invited her.
Yeah, she hadn't told Julia. So the husband is a record producer and is trying to impress her father. So he says that she can stay because he's hoping he might listen to the album. And so she's appeared.
And obviously me and him are getting on very badly. And it might be possibly because, I don't know, but I was imagining in my head that it was possibly because my said husband had maybe been kind of, maybe he's feeling a bit insecure about himself and is
Been a bit, yeah.
maybe flirting with sort of young girls or something to try and make himself feel better about life.
They'd gone, I mean,
And here comes this very beautiful young girl and he's invited her, and everything he does is irritating her and making her feel furious and cross, including bringing this young girl, even though she may have had in the past some kind of, you know, fascination with her, which very quickly kind of returns. But I love that, what I love that Doll set up so brilliantly is the idea of, which speaks so much to this present moment, I think, of this relationship between these two women that are so unlikely, and one's much older and one's much younger, but both sort of in pain and both rather stuck, and that would never otherwise have the kind of opportunity to get to know each other, because probably they're not very good at getting to know other women, and then just because of circumstance, the man leaves the house and gets out of their way, and they start to develop this kind of epistolary romance where they're writing sort of love letters to each other in a way, or finding out about each other through this journal that they write in. And there's something so beautiful about that, and kind of symbolic of something about, you know, once the men have gone away, you can really kind of get to know women in a way that's fucking awesome, and be, you know, be made better for it.
Yeah, that's why.
I love this movie. Thank you so much. And it was an amazing first feature. And I'm just curious to know how you prepared for it, because you did such a great job. And if you had any influences, who they might have been.
God, I've got so many influences, but I don't want to say them in the same breath as this because I'm just starting or whatever. But I this time of watching it, I was thinking, oh God, I mean, I'd thought it and then unthought it, so like Lillian, that she just sort of started making this documentary. What happened in this case was that Jamie Adams, who makes improvised films in England, and I've been in quite a few of them, said that he's been working with Maggie, my producer, and that he would love me to tell a story. And I was just like, to write and direct something, and I was like, I'm not ready, I don't want to. So I found an excuse, which was to do a play with Grace, where I played her mother. And then he asked again, and I was like, oh God, really? And he said, if you don't say yes, I feel like maybe Maggie might not ask you again. So I was like, okay, all right then. So that was the impetus of just having to do it and not think about it too much, not get in my own way. And then I love stories where you're not necessarily told too much of, you know, that you're sort of led vaguely by the emotion of the story, but you can sort of work it out. Like, you might not know where Don has been. Why does he suddenly pop out by the rubbish? I mean, I'm not sure quite. It was just time for him to come back, for me. But, and so maybe, I mean, I remember, but you know, that I remember watching lots of Cassavetes films when I was younger and just thinking I loved the way you could be starting off where they're having a lovely dinner together and then something turns and then it turns back, and that sort of feels like a slice of life, that you don't need to sort of give things beginnings and middles and ends too much. And yeah.
In the middle, if you wanted to stand up.
How much with improvisation, how much improv, what?
Not really. Not really. I don't know. What do you say?
There wasn't, I'd say like, yeah, 8.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't a lot. I mean, it was written. It was written.
Was the grandmother line improvised? That's what I'd like
Oh
to know.
God.
So that's actually true to my life. This is where the Q&A takes a turn. Dolly and I had worked on a TV show together, and one day after work, we had a long drive home, and we were just opening up to each other, and I had mentioned that I actually had seen my grandmother kicked to death by a horse, and she started laughing uncontrollably. And she was apologetic, but she was like laughing very hard. And she said, "I'm sorry, that's horrible, but this is what I do when I get nervous." And so we thought it's the right thing to do to put this in the movie. It's cathartic.
I'm just a real opportunist. I'm so sorry if it's that.
No.
But
If anyone's an opportunist, I think it's me. And then...
no. Anyway.
I wanted to ask if it was always meant to be set in Brooklyn. To me, there are so many, even auditory things that remind me of being a New Yorker and living in Brooklyn in particular, the creaking of the stairs and the brownstone, you know, the dog park, the cafes. Was it always going to be in Brooklyn?
Yes, because I think it was sounds soppy, but I moved to Brooklyn with my family 5.5 years ago, and I sort of felt a bit like Lillian, just quite a lot older, but I did feel quite lost and quite confused, and I couldn't work out if, like, when you move country, suddenly was like, maybe I won't sort of make jokes anymore. I don't know, I just sort of felt like I couldn't really get my bearings. And then suddenly, when we moved to this neighborhood, to Bed-Stuy, I started to really feel like I had a home again. And those were the things, and also that I was looking in a way that I didn't used to look in London, because I'd always lived there. So I was it was a sort of love letter to all these things that I was noticing.
Other questions? Yes?
Hi, Dolly. One thing I liked very much that didn't play to expectations was with the character George and Don, how they found themselves in intimate situations with this lovely, very vulnerable and accessible young woman, and acted like such decent men. And I wondered how intentional that was.
Well, I'm going to pass it. You're going to answer it in a way. But it was intentional because I didn't want it to be. I thought that was too obvious as well. Like, I was just telling a story about people, and I love men and women, and these were really. Well, what was interesting as well was that I think both Eben for sure and Tim, they both felt. I can remember Eben feeling nervous about the scene, and I was like, no, I promise you, all it's going to be is like a shared joy that you two have, like a youthfulness that she likes your music, like your wife has listened to your music for so long. It's just like, oh, you know. And and probably there's some sort of flirtation, but it's not what either of you are really. It's what Lillian is sort of used to getting, probably just as a quick sort of thing. Yeah. But so yeah, I thought it was important to tell stories about nice men too. What would you add to that, Tim, in playing George?
Yeah, it was intentional the entire time, and I think early on you sort of told me to. This never mind. I was going to say early on you told me to sort of treat Lillian like a dog.
Yeah, I did. But no, that was I did. I did. No, that was when you were trying to kiss her. When she was trying to kiss you, I was like, yeah, you're training her a bit like you've trained your dog, or like a sort of At a certain point.
Don't hand the microphone to me anymore. Please. It's gonna go downhill. I mean, how good is John Early in this?
Yeah.
No, oh, sorry. Is Mary Holland still here? Yes.
Yes! Stand up, Mary Holland. How brilliant is Mary? And Gary, how brilliant is Gary? And Jonathan, where is he? And Misha, my husband, how great is he? And where's Nat? And Nat. Woo! There he is.
Is there a question in the way back? I see someone with the mic. I'm not seeing, nope, okay. Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you think, I love that we don't know what the story in the book was. I love that we didn't know it, but did you ever write it?
No, but I did, no. But I didn't write it. I would love to say, yeah, I did, and they're being sold out the front.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. But I didn't think that it was all about Julia as a child. I thought it was like about Julia getting over having lost a baby and moved to New York, and then just sort of, what's it called? Zadie was saying a word, not a memoir, but it's word that I hadn't heard before. Anyway, so it was just a sort of a memoir about her life and her moving to America. And
It's a wonderful touch not to ever get to hear it. I wanted to, but I was glad I didn't. I could make it up in my head.
yeah, it would be much better in your head.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and Zadie describes it so well. It's almost like you kind of did hear it.
Zadie wrote the book.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but I want to thank you so much. It's such a wonderful film. Thank you for coming out, and don't forget to